Christianity is being completely frozen out of America.
Well, let's see. 38 out of 44 presidents have been Christian. 482 out of 525 current congressmen are Christian. 103 out of 112 Supreme Court justices have been Christian. How exactly are they being frozen out again?
Why can't I pray in school?
I'm really glad this statement and the one about the Bible being ruled unconstitutional came up, because this is just blatant misinformation. Now, admittedly, these are children reading cue cards and lines, and they may not know this, but I'm pretty sure Gary does. What happened in these two court cases is very simple. What they said was, what you don't get to do is have the state mandate, compel, suggest, coerce people into praying or reading a Bible in a religious manner. If you want to bring it up in comparative literature or to discuss about the society that wrote these documents, you're actually welcome to do that. You can use it in a secular nature, but you don't get to use the government to establish your religion.
Why can't I write about God in my school papers?
I believe what you're really trying to say is that you can't put "God did it" on the top of your papers and get passing grades, because oddly enough, you have to demonstrate mastery of the subject matter. You're not doing that if you just keep saying, God did it, God did it, God did it. What you're doing is demonstrating mastery of mindlessness.
Why are they taking God out of my history books?
We took out God for the same reason we took out goblins and fairies. That is, assuming they were in the history books to begin with. If you can't demonstrate they existed, it isn't history.
Why do they teach every other theory in science except creation?
When you've got the peer-reviewed research done that actually kind of backs up some of the stories you've been telling each other, then you can start to teach it as science. But until you've actually done the science and made it science, you don't get to call it science.
Why am I called names because I believe in marriage the way God designed it?
Some even call us hateful,
hypocrites,
Unloving,
closed-minded,
bigots.
It is so hateful that people say these things. I mean, it's almost like they've been reading the Bible. I mean, these are the kind of things you would hear from people who, might try and justify slavery by saying, well, God said it's okay. Or there's the kind of things where people might say that, well, women are unclean, and they're unclean twice as long if they give birth to a little girl and a little boy, because little girls are just that extra bit dirty. If you don't want to be called a bigot, stop following a bigoted book. Stop saying bigoted things. Stop being a bigot.
Why can't Tim Tebow praise God after making a touchdown without causing a national uproar?
Well, I don't rightly know. You see, 76% of the country self-identify as Christian. So if there's a national uproar, it's more than likely the Christians who are in an uproar over it. As I recall, the New Testament is rather explicit on how people are supposed to pray, and there's admonishments against being like other people who like to go pray in public. So perhaps that's why they're frustrated with them.
In public school, dating is an obligation.
Now, up until now, I hadn't been paying very close attention to their video. You really don't have to hear some of these claims. They basically repeat themselves. But this one is pretty intriguing. I'm curious, is there a minimum credit requirement? Do you have to take more than one semester? Is the course graded on the curve, or is it pass-fail, or just the regular standard scale? If I wanted to go back for some more graduate work, could I take some classes in this? So that would just be fantastic if you can get that information for me.
Despite modern popular belief, America was founded as a Christian nation.
This particular little myth has got to be one of the longest-lived ones we run into. I mean, we're going to ignore for the moment the First Amendment, which says no state establishment of religion, which would include Christianity. We're going to ignore some of the writings from the founders, which talk about a wall of separation. We'll just go straight to the Treaty of Tripoli, because this is the nail in the coffin, and it's the one that they simply cannot respond to. That how is it that if we were founded as a Christian nation in 1780s, that in 1797 we'd already managed to have a treaty where the United States Senate, with unanimous consent, and the President signed onto a document that said the government of the United States of America is not, in any sense, founded on the Christian religion.
America was once a force for good.
It's an interesting piece of serendipity that this came up here because on Facebook I've been seeing the "we were once a great nation" comments once in a while. So I'm going to ask the same questions. Were we a force for good before, during, or after slavery? Or the Indian Wars? Or women's suffrage was finally passed? Or was it during racial segregation when it finally got outlawed? Is that when we became a force for good and then we stopped being one? Or were we a force for good while we were doing those things? So I'm just curious. You ought to clarify that a little bit. Because I don't think the United States was a force for good. I think it did some good things and we did some bad things. But that it wasn't that we were a force for any of those things. Those are just the things that we did.
No one would dare not to stand, place their hand over their heart, and recite the pledge.
Well, as the saying goes, if you give somebody enough rope, they'll eventually hang themselves. And I believe that's what's happened at this particular junction. What they've said on their website is that they don't want to make a theocracy. No, they're freedom-loving. They love how America's free. They want it to stay free. Except right here is where you get to the crux of the matter, which is that they don't love that it's free. And I'm going to explain that. If you say no one would dare fail to give this speech, that only makes sense in that failing to give this speech would be daring something, that you would have to be risking something. Well, if you're risking something, then that speech isn't truly free. It's compulsory. It's being compelled. It's being coerced out of people to at least some extent. And that goes directly against the ideals of our country in that there will be no compulsory speech. That speech is free. It is not done because the state mandates it. It's not done because other people make you do it. You say what you say because you want to say it, not because someone is making you say it, which is why we take compulsory speech away. But they want to bring it back, because it'd be for the good of everybody, because they say so. And on this note, I think I'm going to call it quits on these guys. I've listened to the Reach America, The Thaw quite long enough. If you want to go check out the rest of the video, by all means, the link is below. However, I do advise taking hip waders. The bullshit is stacked up very deep. So, have a good day.